Hello again, security and risk community. Welcome to another video tutorial to help you get started and make the best of ServiceNow. My name is Eric Ferron in Santa Clara, California. And my guest for this new episode is Ben Forrest. Benjamin is Principal Technical Trainer at ServiceNow, and he's joining us from San Diego. Good afternoon, Ben.
Hey, good afternoon, Eric. It's a pleasure to be here.
All right. So, Ben, we see quite a few questions in the community forum about UCF. You know, people asking how it works, how it integrates with ServiceNow, some integration issues also, and wanting to know how to make the best of this facility. So I believe today you're going to help us answer many of these questions. Is that right?
That's right. UCF is a really good sort of starting point for a lot of folks on their compliance journey, and they're an important sort of part of this ecosystem. And we really are going to learn a lot, I think, in this section.
All right, so let's get started with our usual important set of refreshers, just so that we're all on the same page. So you will remember that we are all on a journey together, a journey to lower risk and higher efficiency and effectiveness. We are starting with the first steps, those that will help you to get to maturity level 1, called basic on this slide. Right? We'll soon have more tutorials for our more advanced customers. You will also remember that these first steps to maturity level number 1 are structured in a knowledge framework that we put together for our new customers. At the beginning and in the center of it all, you will find the tutorials that cover all you need to know regarding process and change management, with some important deep dives showing here on the right side. Recently, we added to this framework a technical stream, and today the focus inside of the technical stream is the all-important UCF.
That's right. We're going to see how they get to combine with our profiles in that video that you saw with Eric earlier. All right, so to give you guys a little bit of background, the UCF is what we call a common framework, and they've gone through and taken all of our authority documents. So those might be regulatory guidelines, various process docs, and so on. Some federally mandated or government entities such as the European Union or the United States government. Some of them might also be best practice guides as put forward by, say, ISO or NIST. And the UCF Common Controls Hub is sort of where we're going to grab all of that information, and we're going to be able to, using this hub, which is a software as a service portal, all the data contained in the UCF is made up of citations. So the citations actually are references extracted from the original authority documents, and we then cross-map those to hundreds of other regulations, standards, best practices, and they've gone through and made sure that they have identified and matched up all of the necessary controls which would make an organization or a process or an environment compliant with any number of regulatory frameworks. So we move from the citations to what we call the mandates. The mandates are going to be where we actually create controls in our environment, and then we are going to link those controls back using the citations to the original documents. So this matches all of the mandates to the controls. And additionally, this also allows us to map all of our terms, all of the actual sort of one-to-one relationships and sort of similarities within all of these process docs, all of these regulations, all these frameworks. And it allows us to kind of have a common language or a common dictionary to speak about compliance. And so this lets us map all of these back and forth across all of these various frameworks in a way that is unified and is structurally sound, if you will. Now, what you might be thinking is if this is a large organization kind of coming at compliance, and a lot of sort of mature organizations already have done some of this work, what the UCF allows us to do is kind of take this from an entire industry-wide standpoint across a whole host of different verticals and come together in one sort of common oranges to oranges or apples to apples sort of language.
Okay, so I believe now you're going to take us through a demo, right?
Correct. Yeah. Let's do my favorite thing and jump right into the platform. I'm going to go into the Unified Compliance Integration. If this isn't installed, well, that's not a big deal. We can actually go into the plugins table, which is going to take us to the store. And if we type in GRC, we'll see if you scroll on down, Compliance UCF. We've got it installed, but if you didn't, you could click install here just to try it out. And mind you wouldn't want to do that in a production instance until you were ready, but we'll get into that in just a moment. So let's go ahead and jump right back over here to Unified Compliance Integration, and we are going to enable our actual configuration using an API key from Common Controls. And you can see that mine at the moment is empty. That's okay. What we're going to go ahead and do is I've logged into the Common Controls Hub on the UCF. I'll have a link to this in the notes, I imagine. And I'm going to go over to the settings, this little cogwheel, and up here on API Manager, I can go into API keys. Now, I've done this demo a few times, so you can see that I've got quite a few different API keys. If I needed to create one, I could just create one and it would allow me to copy one. And once that API key is in place, it actually sends out a REST call out to the site and allows me to pull up each of what we call the shared lists. Now, these shared lists are configured over here in your workspace. And at the very start, when we're configuring these lists out, this list will be empty, right? So you'll have to generate one. And once you've generated one, you always want to use that as your base list. And I've actually identified that right here. If I look at my shared list, I've created a GRC base authority documents. It's important to note that once you've set up some authority documents, you always want to utilize the same shared list with each of these integrations. So if I wanted to change out which authority documents were listed, I need to do that via the workspace and not via the ServiceNow instance itself. So we're going to be basically pushing any of our selected authority documents from UCF, not the other way around. So these have got to match. Let's go ahead and pull that list up. We'll use our base authority documents. We'll save the configuration. And as soon as we do that, you'll see that it's going to download that shared list and import those. And in just a moment, we should have quite a few brand new citations and controls. And it's done. That was fast. Well, actually, through the magic of TV and Eric's editing skills, we've compressed the time a little bit here. And now we can review our changed records and see what we've brought in from the Controls Hub. Oh, look at that. Quite a bit, actually. So we have not only updated SOX, we've got some updated HIPAA, we've got some COBIT, some other authority docs here that I've added as part of my list. There's quite a bit. And we can actually see, let's go ahead and close this here. We can actually see this in action and all of the changes simply by going over to the controls, objectives. And we started initially with some of our demo data before I brought in all of that additional, all those additional lists. We started with something like 1,300 control objectives. And it's important to note that there are two big categories within the control objectives list here. So we see 3,133. It's important to note that not all of those are going to instantiate a control, meaning they're not all mandates. However, they all do exist here so that they can be related back and forth to one another via a series of relationships. And then they can also then be related to citations. And then those citations relate back to the authority docs themselves. So to determine which ones of these will create controls when applied to a policy and a policy to an entity, we can go over here to the personalized list columns here. And the way that I like to recommend is bringing over this creates controls automatically column. And I'm going to use a little list shortcut here. I'm going to hover over the false. I'm going to right click and we're going to filter that right out of town so that we just see the true, meaning anything in this list is going to create a control automatically. And there, as of right now, 2,000 that would be created. So for each one of these, if they're associated to a particular policy, that then will instantiate a control with all of the other sort of gravitas behind that. So attestations, potentially indicators to monitor them, and so on. Now we can go in and see everything that's been changed here. And I think it's also worth noting and taking a moment to just quickly review what this control objective actually looks like, right? Here we have that little check mark, creates controls automatically. You'll also note that we have the ability to check and uncheck it. So if there are certain controls that are not checked by default by UCF, but you'd feel more comfortable having them in place, you know, that little extra bit of security, you can absolutely turn them on. And you'll actually be able to see here that this particular control objective is pretty new. It has no entity types associated with it, no policies that we've associated it to. So we'd actually need to find a home for this particular control objective in the form of a policy to kind of wrap it on up. We can also see the specific citation that is subsection A.1.10, shared assessments, standardized information, question gathering, and risk management. Ooh, okay, cool. So we've got some information here, and my guess is this is likely, based on that, it is coming from an action plan. Where's it coming from? Let's find out. Authority document, shared assessment, standardized. Oh, it's coming from the SIG. Very cool. So if you use the SIG, this is one of the mandated controls that is a part of that whole process. Very cool. All right, so before I get too much more excited about kind of picking through what's different and new here, which is something I like to do anyway, whenever I see new stuff, I'm like, ooh, shiny. Let's go ahead and get back on track here. So I'm going to wrap this up by just looking at the authority documents as they stand now. And I brought in quite a few, as you can see here in that particular list. I brought in 45. Wow, it's a lot. So everything from ISO 2717 to NERC SIP to FINRA to FedRAMP to a whole bunch of other things. So lots of good stuff in here. Oh, I even brought in the Hong Kong Monetary Authority General Principles for Technology and Risk Management. I suppose at one point I was thinking maybe I was going to do some business in Asia. Who knows? All right, Eric, I'm going to go ahead and turn this one back over to you.
I think, to illustrate what you just presented, I suggest we take a quick look at some of the some real life examples and some of our customers asking in the community forum. So here's the first question that was asked by Rohila, and Rohila is facing issues accessing the shared lists. So Rohila has the API, has the OAuth, but is still struggling. So what sort of advice would you be able to give Rohila?
Oh, great question. So if this is happening in, say, the demo environment, or if the demo data is still listed, remember earlier when I mentioned that you want to match up your authority docs to the existing list of authority docs in the Common Controls Hub. So we actually need to create a list first and make sure that we have all the same authority docs as would show up in the base demo data. Now, if this is a production environment and demo data has been removed, well, in that case, all we need to do is create our first list in the Common Controls Hub. Would you like to take a look at that?
Sure, let's do that.
All right. So I'm going to go ahead and share on this side. All right, so here we are in the Common Controls Hub, and what we'll need to do is go into our work list here, and this is going to be all of the saved lists. This is actually what gets queried against when we input that API key. So ServiceNow's REST API goes out, talks to the Common Controls Hub, and then pulls down any shared lists that are saved matching the account that API key came from. So it's really, really important that not only the logged in here and that you've got your API credentials created, as you saw me do a moment ago, we also need to go ahead and create a list. I've already created several lists, and in fact, we've got lists to spare. And once you create your very first list, every list that you do afterwards is going to continue to append to it. So if I select any new documents, I want to make sure that those all match. So I'm going to start with my base controls. And let's use and from here, we can actually start to search through various either geographical related lists or subject matter. Now, let's say we wanted to pull up GDPR. We want to go by subject matter. And GDPR. Oh, hey, regulation 2016/, 679 of the European Parliament and the Council of 27, April 2016, on the protection of natural persons with regard to the processing of personal data. Yes, that's the one. Cool. So we've added that to our list, right? And what's interesting is that GDPR by itself actually has several mandates contained within its document. And that's actually going to make us compliant with several other authority docs, but that's perhaps a discussion for another time. Once I've selected those, I can go ahead and create a new list and save it, right? I can save it as my new list here. When we go back into our list of our shared list, unless we've renamed it, of course, we can always go in and manage our shared list and rename them if we like. And go through and edit them. And say critical controls GDPR. Share this list. And we'll update. And now when I go back into the unified compliance integration, we would go to our shared list, pull that up, and voila, we'd have access to that list.
Thank you for this, Ben. And for the audience, you have a link to that question and its answers to the community forum at the bottom of the slide here. So the next question is from Shamsher, who is interested in knowing two things. The first one is if UCF offers document from the OSFI, or the Office of the Superintendent of Financial Institutions. And the second part of his questions is around the controls to see if they're automatically imported along with the authority documents.
This is actually a great question and one that has a two-part answer. For this, we're going to need to go back into the Common Controls Hub once more. If I were to type in the Office of the Superintendent of Financial Institutions, we could search via subject matter, or in this case, perhaps geography. Pull up North America, look in Canada, and see what was available here. And within the Canadian framework here, we've got a limited subset of sort of options. We've got Marketing Association, Office of Privacy, the Parliament. Unfortunately, OSFI is not in there. So if you are not able to find the specific regulatory framework you're looking for, fear not. UCF is starting to socialize a new tool that they've created called Mapper, which allows you to create some relationships between existing pre-mapped guidelines and frameworks and allows you to create references to any compliance framework of your choice. So you would import the original framework, identify the key citations, and then map everything to your list. This is a separate tool and subscription from the Common Controls Hub. You can check it out by signing up for their free trial, just like you could with the Controls Hub itself.
And this will integrate with ServiceNow. So
that's actually a great question. What this will do is map your new authority documents that you've brought in. It'll map that to your Common Controls Hub, and then ServiceNow pulls all of those controls from the hub.
Got it.
And perhaps Paul will be the first one to map all of the OSFI controls for us.
Yeah. And what about this? The second part of the question around the controls, are they automatically imported along with the authority documents?
As a matter of fact, yes. So when you've identified the key mandates, and that's what the Common Controls Hub does by default with all of their pre-mapped authority documents. As you saw earlier in the demo, we can go through and look at all of the control objectives, and any control objectives identified by the creates control automatically, that is basically the ServiceNow nomenclature to identify a mandated control. So any of those would automatically come over when you bring in those authority docs from UCF.
Well, thank you for this, Ben. And again, in the PDF version of the slides, you have a link to the community forum question at the bottom of the slides. As a conclusion, what would be your advice for our audience? Why should they do right now if they're interested in trying out UCF in ServiceNow?
Great question. And I'm going to answer with my sort of go-tos for most things. One is try jumping into one of our training classes. We actually offer a couple of different levels of training for this topic related to GRC. There's a fundamentals class, which gives you sort of the the end-to-end basics of how the platform works and how we manage risk and compliance and what have you. And then there's also the implementation class, which is quite a bit more advanced, where we dig into some of the nitty-gritty on how to utilize or import or map other frameworks, how to manage some of these scripts, how to automate a lot of these processes. So that'd be my first recommendation. And of course, the main recommendation that I have for just about anything in life is just go try it. Go jump in, mess around until you figure it out. Don't feel like you're going to break things, because we have some personal developer instances just for you. Log into the developer sites, grab an instance, activate the GRC plugins, and go to town. That's my biggest and best recommendation. Additionally, UCF provides free demo accounts that you can try out for a limited time to see how it works, play with the integration, and so on. And in the case of the OSFI question, that might be a really good opportunity to sign up for Mapper as well and see if you can pull all of those things in and make it happen.
All right. Well, we are now at the end of this episode. Thank you very much, Ben, for your time. Thank you very much to the audience also for spending this time with us. A couple of reminders before we close. And of course, the first one is that the PDF version of the slides that you just saw will be available in the forum. And should you have any more questions, and I'm sure some of you will, please put them in the Governance, Risk and Compliance forum, where Ben and other ServiceNow specialists will be able to provide you with the appropriate answers. Again, thank you, Ben, and thank you all for listening. Until next time, goodbye.